So yes, pleased to meet you. My name is Madis, and for starters, I have a couple of confessions to make. First confession is that my track record with brick and mortar world is way longer than with DevOps world. So please be gentle with me. Luckily enough, I'd say that the core basics of technology and financials are still the same. So hopefully what I say still makes sense. And my second piece of confession is that myself, I don't consider Veriff to be a kind of poster boy with FinOps world. I think we are in the middle of a journey somewhere, and please take my presentation as a kind of a honest description as to where we are, and please feel free to chime in. Very quick, the compulsory description of what Veriff is. So we are a 7-year-old, nowadays already is a scale-up, not a startup. We are a global operation, having customers all over the world, and we have roughly 600 people on board, with main centers being in Tallinn and Barcelona, but some other locations elsewhere in the world as well. What we do is actually very simple from looking from outside. We validate or verify the identity of a person. So whenever a company, a corporate needs within their onboarding process to verify the identity of our end user, this is where we go and help them. They redirect the users to us. We pass through the process of asking for a document, both sides of the document, a selfie, and then we run a number of checks and come back with a conclusion whether the person is as he or she claims to be. What's happening behind the scenes is somewhat more complex. We are quite machine learning heavy. We do a lot of text extraction. We do a lot of image processing. We run a number of different checks on the validity, on fraud, and we build a conclusion based on that. And yes, we also have a manual overflow element. So when our automation is not capable of making a decision fully, then there is a human person at the end of the line who actually makes that decision. And our internal goal is continuously to drive the automation rate up. So this is what we work on. Technologically, we are pretty, I would say, nowadays a standard setup. We have a different ways how the end users can interact with us. All our magic happens in microservices and in Kubernetes clusters, and we store our data in sharded databases and in object storage. We are an Amazon-only shop, at least for now, and I've heard rumors that we are the biggest Amazon customers in Estonia. Can't confirm, can't deny, but at least I think we are one of the biggest ones then. And yes, we also use other services if need be. For example, Google Vision, Amazon Recognition. So it's not that we do everything on our own, but we borrow with pride when we can. And it's roughly 120 plus microservices that we run in those in the clusters. Now, closer to the topic of FinOps. Well, here on the picture you have the very obvious kind of advantage of cloud, what is always preached about. On this graph you have a relatively standard situation in Veriff when a big customer comes on board. So what usually happens is that there is a huge spike of kind of processing when they come and bring all their new customers and run through the process of validation. And once we have kind of done that, we have reached the new normal. The load somewhat kind of drops down, and we continue from the new normal level. So on this picture, the yellow graph is one of the kind of business KPIs we consider to be very kind of reflective to our resource usage, and that is the number of images being processed in our system. The blue line is our Amazon bill. So this is what is all the promise of the cloud. You can scale up, you can scale down based on your needs, and the bill kind of comes along. So I still remember the old times when you were planning the resources, and it was a totally different world. You had to do your capacity planning upfront. You had to foresee kind of when you will be hitting a need for new capacity. There was the decision process, there was the ordering process when the actual boxes arrived. So now it's a totally different world. A lot of decisions are not made anymore centrally by top IT management or together with finances. It's being done within the teams. When you need a capacity, the team actually decides they need a capacity, and this is how it goes. It also, the loads go up and down, so it's not that you're going in a certain staircase of resources. And you can scale inherently. Now, that was the good part. The bad part or the risk part is that as there is no more this kind of central choke point of decision making, it can also happen that the spend starts mushrooming because a lot of places in the organization where resource allocation decisions are being made, and it can be kind of actually even enhanced by especially if you're a classical kind of startup scale-up type of organization, your focus is not so much on cost control, but it's on growth. And this is the case in Veriff. Our primary kind of goal is still to grow, and then somewhere alongside comes this need to actually still ensure that we are efficient as well, but number one priority usually is growth. And in this kind of situation, unless you have taken very careful effort to actually build metrics and measure yourself, it can often also be that the organization as a whole has little insight as to what are the sources of kind of a spend increase. You see the bill kind of increasing, and then you need to do a lot of analytical effort to understand where it's coming from, especially if you have a more complex setup. And the classical situation you have in the organization is that it's like I said, its financial team is a bit from Mars and the engineering is from Venus. So financial team has built a certain kind of understanding of how things work. And the tricky part, and it's not the case only with cloud organizations, but it's anywhere. Financial organization is often happy to have a certain superficial explanation of why figures are as they are. In their world, it's enough, and there is a logic in there because usually building very heavy kind of financial analysis is costly. So when you have a certain answers to your questions, they sound feasible enough. Management can operate based on that. That's enough. But the trick really is that when it's not really well connected to the actual reality of engineering, then financial team is in a constant state of surprises. I mean, they got certain explanations why things were as they were last month. This month, bill behaves differently, and they again coming back and asking why did it happen so. And the other side of the coin is that engineering teams tend not to be focusing on cost and spend. They tend to focus on product development, on stability, and they are very valid kind of focus areas. So, but it all kind of comes together to this kind of a certain state of confusion around spend management. And as the FinOps organization also kind of has put together a kind of certain statistics set, what are the kind of constant pain areas in this domain, then you can see kind of the same stuff I was just talking about. It is about actually getting cost being a priority in engineering teams. It's a totally separate world, is shared cost. It's its own kind of a can of worms, because it's also very much about finding a good balance between a good enough split of costs and still having the kind of criteria for that split being actionable enough so that actually the owners of kind of who get those costs, they understand them and they feel that they can actually do something about those costs. And once you have actually kind of finished looking backwards and understanding what happened, the next level of challenge is trying to forecast what you're doing, because every engineering decision you make it tends to have an impact also on the cost side. So how does that come together? That's a challenge. So enter FinOps. It's a nice new word. It used to be called cloud financial management, but at the end of the day, I think the key kind of a thing to take away is this in the small gray box there on the slide. It's not so much about financial operations, but it's about DevOps and financial teams working together. And the whole idea is that just like DevOps was kind of breaching the gap over development and operations domains, something similar needs to be done in terms of financial and engineering domains. So it's very much, and I would say that the pattern is very much similar. It's about first of all getting maximum results. You can do things differently, just the results are not so good. It is about bringing together the engineering, finance, and business teams, and it's also about collaborating and having a very data-driven approach to it. That is a very crowded slide. I borrowed it from the FinOps presentation, didn't want to really rewrite it. I'm not going to kind of explain every single part of it, but this kind of tries to bring together what is all there about the FinOps practice. And I think the kind of main kind of takeaways still are that it's about collaboration between the different teams. It's about delegating the decision, also about the spend and cost down to the actual kind of teams making other decisions around their services. There is a central team usually who is kind of pulling it all together, being in a healthy sense a challenger and a kind of an evangelist. It usually consists of a partly finance team and partly somebody from engineering. But they are not really the ones who are making the decisions about specific activities to drive down cost. This still needs to be done by the actual teams who are responsible for the other aspects of their work. And as with any kind of change, it is very much about not trying to overjump your maturity. You crawl first, you walk then, and you run then, and it has certain kind of elements of it. First of all, really having an insight into how your system behaves, then starting optimizing that, and then finally actually making an automated standard process around that. So where is Veriff there? With a kind of grain of salt, I would say that we have started the journey. We have had the classical kind of basic financial accounting around our resources. We do have our tracking of product-related spend and the rest. And product-related spend is something that makes our business go around. Every management meeting looks actually on the cost of identity verification and asks the questions, why is it going up or why is it going down? And we have identified a number of key business metrics which make sense to the business side, but are also understandable for the engineering side. And this is like the common truth we share and we look. There is also kind of a monthly and weekly feedback to the actual teams on the resource consumption of our system. We have created reports, and then they are quite complex reports that give a kind of report on very many different aspects of system behavior. You can have basically breakdowns by cost or by resource consumption, by production or non-production, by clusters, by accounts tags, whatever you have there. And I would say that in this phase, it doesn't mean that there hasn't been any kind of cost-saving activities at all. I would rather say that it has been a common sense-based activity, so there has been maybe not been a real drive behind that. But whenever an engineer meets an obvious case of waste, they obviously also have been addressing that. We've been moving into the optimize phase, I would say, meaning that we have started taking a more driven, systematic and conscious kind of approach to reducing waste. And first of all, it has consisted a number of different activities to actually eliminate the most obvious kind of cases of waste. Right sizing, kind of all the different ways you have there. And while we've been doing that, we have also been discovering that our cost tracking methodology we've been using needs enhancement, because what worked before and what was good enough for kind of top management reporting doesn't really help you to go deeper and in detail when it's basically not fine-grained enough. So in parallel, there is quite a lot of discussions as to how we should enhance our methodology. Almost philosophical questions like is a backup part of production or not, and those kind of things and discussions you have between engineering and finances. And in the category of this one-off low-hanging fruit type of activities, we have also actually done something which maybe is more common to this kind of older type companies, but we have actually run a tender for a cloud service provider and approached 3 major ones and actually asked them to give the best offer to us. Maybe this is not something that every size company can do, but in our case, I think we barely got to the level where they take us seriously. So this process is ongoing in the finishing line, and yeah, I mean it has been quite an interesting journey there. Where we want to head or go next is the operate phase, because what we've been doing so far. Oh, maybe what I forgot to mention also is that while we have those reports which we can feed back to the teams, to be absolutely honest, they are not very much used. I mean, it's classical case. You provide the data to the teams, but when the interest is low, then it doesn't really work as a kind of cycle. So what we really need as a next level is more of a cultural change. We need to start taking the tools we have and creating a kind of a cyclical process of finding waste, having decisions around them, and actually doing something about that, and on and on and on. Now coming to this actual kind of cost optimization, I mean, it's kind of the obvious. There are different ways how cost or cost can happen. It's the simple part is just pricing. I mean, and from there you go to the resource allocation efficiency. The better you kind of adjust to the changing loads, the less you have waste in there, and the opposite as well. If you don't have full automation, if you, for example, if the load drops and if you are slow in reacting and bringing your kind of resource allocation down, you have a waste again. Coming further is the actual system behavior itself. Whatever you do from like kind of a cluster configuration perspective, the system itself internally can be, you can usually there is a lot of kind of inefficiencies you can address there if you want to. And maybe certain elements which are not so obvious, especially in this kind of distributed organizations, whenever you do a kind of major change that affects a lot of teams, and like migrating from, I don't know, old platform to a new one, or an old database structure to a new one, it often means that you have in parallel in production the old setup and the new setup, and the longer it takes for the actual kind of migration to take place, the longer you have double cost. So it's about acknowledging that this is also a cost, kind of source of cost, and deciding whether it's fine for you or whether you actually want to enforce the migration so that you won't have that cost. That is another aspect there. Data lifecycle, another thing. And usually you tend to address those drivers of cost in two different domains. One is the financial domain, which is very much about negotiating price or doing certain kind of trade-offs and deals. I allocate resource for a period of time, you give me a discount on that. The other domain is engineering domain, which is about addressing all those inefficiency from an engineering perspective. You do your usage reduction, get rid of stuff you don't use, you right size, you address your automation so that it really is efficient from a resource allocation perspective. You play around with different tools you have, and at the end of the day, you also actually go and optimize your system already on the next level. And this is, I think, a very good example as to, I would say that when the engineering domain, at least the first steps you can do kind of without much of a financial kind of team's kind of support, then already the financial domain questions, they require the input from both. So it's already the first area where you have a lot of kind of cooperation needed. Some practical stuff we've come across, I mean, taking the maximum out of the enterprise savings plans and reserved instances is a magic in its own. You need to really plan it well to find a good kind of balance between your risk appetite and the actual kind of flexibility. Then a lot of kind of simple stuff, or not simple, but very engineering-driven stuff. All those people who've been actually kind of instrumental in those pictures, they're actually sitting here in the room. So, cheers, guys. So first of all, the very obvious thing, we were running our observability platform was a very visible part of our cost. So we made a decision to actually migrate away and to build an on-prem platform there. So this is like a mid-term activity we are doing, and we are in the middle of that right now. But while we were doing that, we also looked at our logs and discovered a lot of kind of nonsensical, unusable logs there. And as our cost is driven in this observability platform by the ingress, just by kind of reading the logs you don't really use, and you can see it had a clear impact on cost. Another example is that just monitoring the different kind of clusters and accounts you had, the obvious questions arose why machine learning cost is rising as such. It was enough to ask the question, and you got to the understanding that it's just that people have forgotten to shut down the instances when they don't really use them. So a quick kind of cooperation between DevOps and machine learning teams, shutting down the idle instances, plus kind of some machine right-sizing activities there, and you can see the trend happening there as well. What other things can be done? There is a number of, especially for smaller players, there is a number of intermediaries who actually offer you this kind of a promise of kind of a certain kind of economy of scale. So you basically allocate your resources through them, and they basically use the power of their kind of negotiation, which is somewhat bigger than yours. There is a bunch of different tools out there that promise you also either automation around FinOps or kind of profiling. So it's all how down to you how deep into the rabbit hole you want to go and when you want to go. For example, we've been looking up to a cloudability tool, which is a bit like Cost Explorer on steroids, but we really felt that at the current moment we are not mature enough to use it, and with its kind of a pricing structure of a % per turnover. So I wouldn't say that we never go there, but I think we need to get to the point where we feel the pain more strongly, and I guess then we'll be looking into those kind of things. And then again, totally maybe not very obvious things like having a more kind of a rigid view on actual on your change projects, and ensuring that they move in a time-boxed manner, and you don't have like a long-running kind of resource allocations in production. Can be another thing. So maybe about this final phase or about FinOps as a whole, I think it's important to stress that the core thinking of FinOps is not cost cutting. It is about whenever you have a portfolio management, be it stock or be it project portfolio, you want to maximize the value of that portfolio. So sometimes you basically prioritize one aspect of the item in the portfolio, sometimes the other. And I think this is also the important thing about FinOps is that somewhere a bit further away from the business and from the product development, you are not really in a position to assess whether at any point of time it is more important to grow, invest into product development, or now it's a good time to actually eliminate some waste. This decision can be only made together within that team or decision process, which is deciding, prioritizing the actual team priorities. So it is all about conversations about the cost, not so much about public shaming, and it is about ensuring that the teams take basically cost as a parameter when they actually prioritize. And once you are there, you actually want to automate that process. There are different reasons. You want to be systematic about that, but it is also that if you don't track it, you're not really sure how effective you are, because the actual life is so volatile. For example, ourselves within a couple of months ago, we actually cut our costs in the area of $30,000 by doing different activities, but it was evened out by a size of increase in database size by $40,000. So at the end of the day, for the top management, it wasn't so visible, but you need to be aware of yourself as to, what you do, what is the impact of that, and, it's called cost avoidance. So the final takeaways, the common sense things. Understand your system, understand how it behaves, then you can actually start taking decisions about what you do about it. Set really the matrix up in a way that there is a common truth between you and the business. So the engineering understands them, business understands them. It's a basis for common discussions. And really the gist of it is feed the cost information back to the source of the resource decisions. And I think the nirvana would be when the engineering teams would be viewing cost as another system parameter, just like memory, just like CPU. It's just another dimension you need to take into account when you make your decisions. And yes, walk before run. So don't maybe take it easy. Start the journey and just go as fast and as aggressively as you feel the need for. And if somebody is considering a career path, this FinOps method seems to be a growing trend. So Google it. Maybe you have an interest there as a specialist. And any resources out there, actually every cloud provider has their own segments dedicated to that. There are independent sources, and maybe the most authoritative source is the FinOps organization's own website. I think I'm in time.
Let's have a few questions before coffee break.
Thank you very much for the talk. My question is about the efficiency of the methods that you listed here. So basically, you mentioned both tracking the unused resources, right, mm-hmm. and system redesign for efficiency. My question is about the order of the magnitude of the efficiency of those measures. Is it 50-50, or you better look at the unused resources, or you better re-architect your system for the cost efficiency? What is the impact?
I think it. The bad thing is the answer it depends, because it depends on No, I mean the point is that I have seen situations in my past when doing a small code change in the system. provided the huge impact on the actual kind of efficiency of the system. So you can do kind of a lot in both good and bad ways by actually on the system level. Having said that, the thing about the kind of the resource level, I mean, managing Kubernetes kind of, or the lure of it is that you can do it with a smaller team, with a smaller effort, and the impact is quite big. We've been doing this kind of spend kind of projection analysis together with Amazon, for example, and for example, their analysis told us that 10% it's right-sizing activities. 20 to 30% savings plans, and what they didn't really go into was this system optimization, unless you have a very clear pain and you see that you have like obvious kind of a waste there. I think that I would address more as part of this regular FinOps kind of process, where it's not that you go in and start cutting the system, but more create the environment when all the different bits and pieces gradually look at each other and try to be more efficient in their work.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Do you have more?
Thank you for the talk. Really interesting stuff. You mentioned Amazon Cost Explorer and also evaluated cloudability for cost visibility. Like, is there something else you're using for that, especially like across different clouds?
Well, we are Amazon only shop today, so in that sense, our tools today are still pretty simple. I mean, we have our own automation that brings actually together the key data about the cost. So no, just Amazon Cost Explorer right now, and our own reporting, and we have some vision about what we want to do about our own reporting next, and that is very much about going more granular and tying together the business and kind of engineering events and parameters actually.
Okay, thank you. One more question here. Do we have one more? No, that's the last question.
Yeah, thank you. I have a question regarding Kubernetes. Like, if you are running multiple team services in one cluster, how do you collect the separate costs per team?
That is I mean, that is today what we do is we provide feedback on resource utilization. So when it really still remains for us to put a kind of a figure on that per team. So what we do is that we measure the resource utilization of each service. The service also, when you deploy or when you configure your service, each team kind of provides their assessment as to how much they actually foresee the usage in which, and we provide feedback on what is the actual real life situation. But putting a dollar figure on that is something we still need to do. Okay, and we do have a workshop on FinOps later today, where we explore Amazon Cost Explorer a bit more. I'd like to thank you, Madis, for an insightful talk. Okay.